from multiple countries signed documents establishing the group.
This board has the chance to be one of the most consequential bodies ever created, and it's my enormous honor to serve as its chairman. I was very honored when they asked me to do it. We're going to be very successful in Gaza. It's going to be a great thing to watch, and we can do other things. We can do numerous other things once this board is completely formed.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio stressed the body's job, first and foremost, is
on making sure that this peace deal in Gaza becomes enduring.
Adding,
but I also think it will serve as an example of what's possible in other parts of the world.
In a video message to leaders at the forum, Ali Shath, head of the new technocratic government in Gaza, announced the Rafah border crossing would open in both directions next week. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office and the Israeli military did not have immediate comment. Another topic of discussion at the forum has been Greenland.
Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has released a statement following President Trump's meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Following his meeting with the NATO head, President Trump announced he agreed a framework of a future deal on Arctic security. In her statement, the Danish leader said that NATO is fully aware of Denmark's position that anything political can be negotiated on, including security, investment, and economic issues. But she said we cannot negotiate on our sovereignty. Frederiksen added that she had been informed that this has not been the case. The Danish PM said that only Denmark and Greenland can make decisions on issues concerning Denmark and Greenland. I'm Karen Shamas.
This is AP News. A former president could face contempt charges.
A House committee advanced resolutions to hold former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress over the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. The Clintons have said they had nothing to do with Epstein for decades. Bill Clinton offered to have the committee leadership and staff interview him in New York. Chair James Comer rejected the offer.
Former President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were legally required to appear for depositions before this committee. They refused.
The Clintons contend the subpoenas are invalid because they do not serve any legislative purpose. Committee Democrat Maxwell Frost says this is a distraction. Republicans should focus on release of the Epstein files.
1% of documents is unacceptable for a bill passed by the United States Congress that they are in violation of.
No former president has ever successfully been forced to appear before Congress.
I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. An extreme cold warning will go into effect here early Friday morning. We'll see partial sunshine developing here for today with a few spotty flurries possible late, a high into the mid-20s. Breezy winds out of the west to 15 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 35. For tonight, a chance for some flurries at times, partly cloudy, a low near -8. By Friday, sunshine will see high around 0. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 16.
Bag huge savings with Menards 15% off bag sale. Peak 50/50 antifreeze and coolant provides your vehicle with year-round protection, and it's compatible with all vehicles. Pick up a 1-gallon jug of Peak 50/50 antifreeze and coolant for $6.99 after you put it in the bag. Now through January 24th. Plus, get 15% off everything you can fit in the bag. See store for complete details.
Save big money at Menards.
Chicago's progressive talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chu. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chu.
Good Thursday morning, progressives. Yes, welcome to the January 22nd, 2026 edition. Wow, January 22nd already. Of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. Email me at richard@wcpt820.com. Follow me on X, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, Substack, and Spottable. Catch all of our shows, of course, by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. There you can get Choose Views, featured interviews, Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. And yes, I was her body double yesterday, sat in for Joan, and she will be back today. But that's where you can catch Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. The great Patty Vasquez. It was kind of cool, Henry. I'm leaving out. Patty's coming in last night. I was like, okay. And of course, it's the Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath. I made Lady B laugh when I said, because I don't think she's ever heard me refer to Patty driving us home in her hoopty. So got a nice chuckle from Lady B. But catch all of our shows out Chicago and our other great shows and interviews on the weekends. The Family Meeting will be back on air soon. And make your way over to heartlandsignal.com. We got a full plate this morning, so I will keep it as tight as I can. Some of the notable articles at over at Heartland Signal. We've got a great one on Medicare for All. Border Patrol Greg Bavino whining about what the citizens aren't allowing them to do in Minneapolis. He's such a, okay, I'll keep it clean because I don't want Henry to have to hit the button. But a number of great pieces, as always, over at Heartland Signal. And one of the things that we like to really point out is our writers there, our research team and all that, they do such a great job. When you see something on Heartland Signal, it's been researched, it's been vetted, they put it together the right way, and I'm super proud of what our team over there does. But on our show today, talk about a busy, busy morning. In a few short minutes, we'll have with us Illinois State Comptroller Susana Mendoza will be joining us at 6:15-ish. And then at 6:30, Benjamin Goldhagen, who's a Russian disinformation expert and director of the 2025 documentary, The Steel Porcupine. At 7 o'clock, Dr. Anthony Douglas will be joining us. He is a trauma surgeon at the University of Chicago and has really been the person behind and lead organizers behind the responsibility in firearms legislation, also known as RIFL Act here in Illinois. And then from the Election Truth Alliance, Nathan Taylor will be joining us at 7:30. So busy morning, guys. We're going to keep it moving as best we can. Henry and Mike are going to make sure that we don't run the train into the ditch or run the truck into the ditch or the train off the rails, whatever you want to call it. But they're going to keep us tight this morning. Let's see. How do we want to do this? We got that. Okay, good. We're good. Couple of quick items for you guys to be paying attention to. And the phrase that I'm going to use is one that I can't take any ownership of other than just saying it. And that is Donald Trump is definitely moved back into the label that was given to him as Donald Taco. Trump always. Chickens out, y'all. He always chickens out. You know, and so this is where we have that moment. And I just think for all the people who said that he was going to do this, going to do that, he was going to fix this, he was going to fix that, we know that it was campaign BS and lies. He hasn't delivered, and he won't. Guys, listen, please understand this. He is not going to deliver on the economic items that he ran on and the entire GOP ran on. They're not going to deliver on it because they don't have any plans. They have chaos to distract you. And while they're distracting people, they're snatching up all this largesse. And when I see people, I saw a couple people, or heard a couple people that were talking to Patty yesterday about how, you know, Joe Biden left the border wide open and the border was open and Trump fixed the border's closed. First of all, that's a damn lie. Secondly, we had a bill, we had a bipartisan bill, Henry, y'all remember this, that Mike Johnson, little baby Mike, decided that he was going to take daddy's orders, Donald, and muck up that bill. We would have had the money. We would have had the process to not then have people be terrified in their neighborhoods. So let's start with that. But let's also go back to the fact that we have more than one border. Let's talk about the border. like the border that people want to talk about is all-encompassing. We have 4 borders, if you want to just be literal. We have 4. Right. Depending on how you slice it and dice it, we're not a box of a country, but we've got more than one border. The southern border is the one that everybody wants to talk about because it's the one that we can make it the others, the brown people. But what about the northern border, y'all? And I know people go, well, there's no issues with the northern border because the people that are if coming to the United States and coming across the border, quote unquote, undocumented or illegal is the conversation, then that includes all of the borders that we have. It includes all entry. See, this is the problem. It's about entry into the United States if you really want to have this conversation. It's not the borders. It's the entry. And then what about the people who have been here and have overstayed their, quote unquote, documented status? What about those? And I know there's always going to be that person. Yeah, but Richard, I have a guy in my neighborhood who's from, Europe, and but did they roll into the neighborhood and snatch up the people that look like him? It's not happening. So let's cut the lies. Let's cut the garbage. All right. Had to get that one out, Henry. Trump always chickens out is definitely topic right now. Chickened out. And one other thing. I'll try to find the clip of this. At Davos, one of the knuckleheads from the Trump administration was speaking there, and he went after Europe. Started calling them nasty names and trash talking, essentially. I didn't see the clip. I got the notification. But this is what I know happened. I don't know the exact words that he said, but I know whatever the exact words were, Miss Lagarde decided to get up and walk out. Christine Lagarde, decided to get up and walk out. Didn't say anything, didn't push back. There was some folks that had some heckling to this U.S. official, and I just lost my feed on that. Yeah. She got up and walked out. That's what you do. So, Taco, Donald Trump. Trump always chickens out. Yes, he does, because he's feckless when you think about it. He really is. Here in Chicago, here in Illinois, we've got some great folks that have been in leadership roles, and one of them is our Illinois State Comptroller, Susanna Mendoza, is going to be with us in a little bit. Back in the summer, she and I had a chance to hang out for a little bit. I wanted to kind of help her get a flavor of Hyde Park and talk about small businesses there, which as a comptroller, that's one of the things that's really been important to her. So we've got a little bit of a clip that we're going to play, and then we'll go to break and come back, and hopefully we'll have Comptroller Mendoza with us. Let's go for it.
Hi, I'm Illinois State Controller Susanna Mendoza. I'm the state CFO, but today I want to be your tour guide. I am joined by my friend Richard Chu from WCPT, and he's going to take me and you on a tour of beautiful Hyde Park.
Join us.
Hyde Park, heralded as a model of integration, is a historic neighborhood on Chicago's South Side.
Come to Valois Restaurant to get what? Some of President Obama's favorites.
My favorite bookstore. I'm totally going to buy this book.
Roux, beignets.
You know what else they have here? Bread pudding.
On our first date, I treated her to the finest ice cream Baskin-Robbins had to offer. Is it Medici or Medici?
I think it's Medici.
I don't care what you call it.
Oh, wow. Mwah. For the best caramel, apple, and homemade fudge, come to Killing.
It's groovy.
I got you. Cinco Rabanitos.
And this is my favorite place, girl. Let's go.
Try the cecina tacos.
It's delicious.
Another one of Chicago's great landmarks.
All are welcome.
The Bond Chapel.
It looks like we're in a Harry Potter movie. Come to the DuSable Black History Museum and Education Center. And say hello to Mayor Washington.
To the best plantains and jerk chicken, it's Jaw Grill. What do you have to say about that, Dick?
Yeah, I'm on.
Hey, Dick, did you know that the University of Chicago has produced 101 Nobel Prize winners?
I feel smarter already.
Science. Come to the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry. Check out the coal mines and the captured German submarine.
The Germans invaded Chicago?
Really? We're here at Seminary Co-op. She's so great. Hold on. I'm sorry, do you realize you're a dead ringer for Senator Carol Moseley Braun?
And do you realize I'm not dead yet?
Senator and Ambassador Carol Moseley Braun, a true original daughter of Hyde Park.
See you in Hyde Park.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. In 1939, when Europe was on the brink of war, a single mother was bringing Jewish refugees into her home, teaching her two daughters to help others when you can and fight injustice. Freddie and Tross Offerstegen took their mother's advice to heart, joining their mother in distributing anti-Nazi newspapers and pamphlets for the resistance, a dangerous act when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. But with the girls being young, Freddie being only 14 and Tross being only 16, Nazis were less likely to suspect them to be working for the resistance. This is most likely why in 1941, a commander of the Haarlem resistance group to ask their mother if he could recruit Freddie and Tross. Their mother and the girls agreed and were given basic training, and within 2 years the girls are bringing Jewish refugees into hiding, working in emergency hospitals, sabotaging bridges and railway lines, and killing Nazis, sometimes ambushing them from their bicycles. Despite the Netherlands not wanting to acknowledge the girls' achievements, their contributions to helping the Allied powers will never be unnoticed.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
This is Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Let's hit them with a couple of quick Choose Views news items on this January 22nd, 2026. There are cities that are fast growing in the United States. The top 10 cities, AI engineers snagged the top spot for 7 of the 10 jobs on the Rise list that's surfacing as the fastest growing jobs in 10 metropolitan cities in the U.S. The data-backed rankings highlight where local opportunity exists and signal where each city's workforce is headed, from real estate jobs popping up in Dallas, new home sales specialists and real estate brokers, to entrepreneurial career paths in Los Angeles, venture partners and strategic advisors. AI roles in New York, AI engineers, AI consultants and strategists are also rounding out the list. Gen Z is worried about AI, of course, in the workplace. Some 80% of employees expect artificial intelligence to affect their daily tasks, according to a survey of 27,000 workers and 1,225 employers conducted by top recruitment firm Randstad. Gen Z, quote, is the most concerned generation, while baby boomers show greater self-assurance and are the least worried about AI's impact and their ability to adapt, according to the annual Work Monitor report. Natural gas prices spike ahead of the Arctic cold front that's coming through many parts of the upper Midwest and parts of the U.S. Natural gas prices are surging as much as the U.S. prepares for bitter cold temperatures through this weekend. The Arctic cold front is expected to bring wind chills as low as minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit to the Midwest and northern plains, driving natural gas futures to a more than a 50% gain in just 2 days. Southern states, including Texas, home to key gas production sites, are at risk of days-long power outages thanks to major ice storms that are slated to arrive late Friday, and also because their power grid stinks because their governor and their administrators there don't know what the hell they're doing. That's a fact. Amazon is looking to open the largest mega store outside of Chicago. Amazon's dominance of e-commerce hasn't yet translated to brick and mortar retail, but it's hoping to change that in a suburb of Chicago. Unmentioned yet, but we're going to try to find that out. The company unveiled plans to build its largest store in the world, a big box center that dwarfs a typical Walmart supercenter. 229,000 square foot building would be half grocery store and half online fulfillment center. Amazon aims to compete with Walmart and Costco, which dominate the in-person shopping space that still accounts for 80% of all retail sales. And here's one that I mentioned in terms of housing. We talked a little bit about this yesterday when I was on Jones' show. The U.S. seeks to limit institutional investors in housing. The U.S. government is moving forward with its push to make housing more affordable. Donald Trump has signed an executive order that looks to limit the purchase of single-family homes by large institutional investors. Yesterday, remarks at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Trump declared that homes are built for people, not corporations. The move comes at a tough time for the housing market, with prices up more than 50% since before the pandemic and interest rates remain fairly high. But here's my observation on this. It's a lot of noise right now, really coming from Trump wanting to ban Wall Street from buying single-family homes. It should happen, but at the end of the day, it's noise, because ultimately there's a lot of, it's a big discussion point, but what's in the details of that? These big investors only own a small piece of the homes that are out there, and I've commented on this before. most of the effect is going to happen in the local markets. So it's not going to flip housing overnight. It gets big headlines, it gets attention, but it's once again a Trump promise without a lot of, deliveries or deliverables to it. Local markets, the dynamics in local markets are really what decide what buyers actually experience, and that we will keep you posted on that story. So, all right, guys, there you go. A couple of Choose Views news items on this Thursday morning. So, let me come back to this Trump taco thing. Before I do that, I wanted to give some clarification. Sorry. Howard Lutnick berated Europe at the Davos dinner that took place yesterday evening, and she got up and walked out. Christine Lagarde, who's the president of the European Central Bank. No fuss, no fight, no debate. She just got up and walked out. And I think that was more than appropriate. I wasn't there. Would love to have been there. Didn't get my invite in time, so I wasn't able to get my flight, get my hotel room. But there you go. That's how you do it. Just walk out. And it is her walking out is example is the word that comes to mind. It's certainly a representation of what much of Europe is going to do or is doing now by many experts to the United States. They're going it alone. Not alone. I mean, let me flip that. The U.S. wants to go it alone and do stupid stuff like, potentially attack Greenland. European Union, European financial leaders and global leaders are saying we need to shoulder up together because this chaos coming from the White House, from the United States, is not something we can get down with. And so I won't make a prediction. I'll just put out a talking point that I think has to be looked at. I see more of that coming, where European leaders say that they aren't going to have certain meetings with this administration, that they're going to be more inclined to build allyships with other European Union countries, stronger ones than they already have. I don't know this, but this is one of those moments where my common sense is kind of kicking in. And because of the doo-doo show that Donald Trump has presented at this Davos World Economic Forum in Davos, I think it just adds fuel to that conversation. That the European Union leaders are sitting back and saying, WTF, y'all? Do we really need this? And, that's where they are. So we'll see how this plays out. And I'm cautiously going to say that this is not that's not the last European leader that's going to, quote, walk out or walk away from certain types of dealings with the United States until the administration, and this is not going to happen, gets their head right. So yesterday, while I was on sitting in for Joan, I had a call from a woman who asked me, Richard, how are we going to get through these next few months, and what happens if we don't have midterms? I believe her name was Connie, and I don't know if my answer was good enough for her or accurate enough for her. Maybe accuracy is not the right word, but if it was soothing or supporting enough for her, let me put it that way. But what I did say is, and when as we worked our way through the show, and I think Hal and I talked about this, we're going to have midterm elections. I think the concern right now is how much can we do? How do I want to put this, Henry? We have to make sure that we don't give Donald Trump tools to insert troops into streets. Okay, we have to We have to do everything we can to help our citizens in different cities that are being attacked by this federal government to stay as calm as they possibly can and not give Donald Trump a reason, or not a reason, but give him an excuse to send in troops and martial law and all this garbage. We have to do our best to support the folks that are being put upon in cities, that are being attacked in cities. Because after Minneapolis, they'll move those troops someplace else. They'll make up some garbage about, another blue city. They're probably going to come back to Chicago. They're going to, that's what's going to be the play, is to go where there's blue dominance and create some dust to then get someone to overreact. Now, maybe overreact's not the right word. Maybe it's just reacting and responding. But so I'm trying to be careful with not saying this to oversimplify it and sound like I'm not being sensitive to what people are feeling on the ground. So I'm just asking for a little bit of a room to be able to try to say what's on my mind and in my heart in terms of Connie's question about midterms. I believe we're going to have them. I believe we're going to get there. But what I don't want us to do, and what I do want us to do, I don't want to see people take any more of the bait that they're already throwing down. I do want us across the country to do everything we can to help the people in communities that are being attacked by ICE and by Border Patrol and potentially by troops. Whatever we can. That's where we have to be to support that effort. Now, I'm going to slide into a little bit of the conspiracy theory conversation about what I think could happen. And you guys may laugh at me about this, but I'm going to just say this. The provocateurs were rampant during the height of the George Floyd protest. Instigators were rolling into cities, Henry, and starting some stuff, right? And so this time around, please don't be surprised. And for those of us who are out here doing what we do, don't take the bait, because I won't be surprised if we have a Manchurian candidate moment in the city where the administration, the regime, this crazy regime, will actually have a person that will stir up some serious dust that's disposable to them, one of their own people, put on task to cause an issue with ICE, with Bovino and his boys, so that they have, in their mind, they have the right to go after more people. Now, I started off by saying, y'all might call me crazy, but I'm going to touch the third rail in that conversation. They are so desperate to stay in power. They are so desperate to do the things that we've been hearing about. Then maybe I'll put it in this vein. I won't be surprised if we see that. So I'm not saying that to be crazy. I'm not. I really am not. I'm just saying, with all that we've seen happen, I mean, hell, if we're going to fly into a country, Venezuela, and invade their country and snatch their president, don't tell me that they would not think for a minute or cook up for a minute a Manchurian candidate scenario. Okay? So what can we do? What do I think we should try to do or be aware of? Is that keeping our brothers and sisters who are on the ground, say right now in Minneapolis and in other cities that they may go to do our best to support them and keep them as calm as we possibly can. Because right now, that is the primary thing we have to focus on to help us get through these next few months and get to the midterms. Okay? I just feel like, and one of the other things that we've got exposure in terms of big events, we've got the Winter Olympics, and then we've got the Summer Olympics. So we've got to be super mindful of the fact that these are things that are going to be out there that are big events, that we just pay attention, y'all. So call me crazy, But if they're going to invade a country and snatch their president, don't think it's not past them to cook up something that's Manchurian Candidate-esque. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Check up on health with Chris Whitting.
Sleeping in a bedroom kept at about 75 degrees may help older adults sleep more comfortably and reduce physical stress overnight, according to research from Australia's Griffith University. The study tracked adults aged 65 and older during the Australian summer, monitoring bedroom temperatures along with heart rate and stress responses. Researchers found that maintaining nighttime temperatures around 75 degrees lowered the likelihood of heightened stress during sleep. While daytime indoor temperature guidelines exist, generally topping out around 79 degrees, there are currently no clear recommendations for nighttime conditions. The study authors believe that heat causes the heart to work harder, pushing more blood toward the skin to cool the body. When this strain continues for long periods, it can interfere with the body's ability to recover from daytime heat exposure. With Checkup on Health, I'm Chris Whitting.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. An extreme cold warning will go into effect here early Friday morning. We'll see partial sunshine developing here for today with a few spotty flurries possible late, a high into the mid-20s. Breezy winds out of the west to 15 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 35. For tonight, a chance for some flurries at times, partly cloudy, a low near -8. By Friday, sunshine will see high around 0. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 18.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for hanging with us this morning. As can happen with our political leaders, stuff comes up. So Illinois Controller Mendoza was going to be with us, but got one of those last minute calls. Got to solve a problem. Got to put a fire out. So we will try to have her with us next week. We've had this gentleman on our show before, and at this time when we've got a U.S. president that wants to invade yet another country, i.e., like Venezuela wants to take over Greenland. We've got a president of another country, Russia, that invaded another country, Ukraine. That's the words you got to use. The soft words don't work because they don't get people's attention. He invaded Ukraine, and people have died as a result of it. Could we have done a better job? We always can do a better job. That's always going to be my answer, yes. What that may be, we may not never know because of who we have currently in the White House. But with us this morning is Ben Goldhagen, who's been with us before. He is the producer. He's the leading voice in a very, very important documentary called The Steel Porcupine. Good morning, Ben, and welcome back to Choose Views. How are you doing?
Hey, Richard. Thanks a lot for having me back. And, I could say things are going good, but things are pretty screwed up. So that's really the situation as it remains.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, first of all, and I said this before when we had you on a few weeks ago, I mean, big kudos and high fives to you for being on point, with this work that you've been doing. Remind our audience about who you are and the work that you've done, and then try to bring us up to speed on some of the things and the developments that you've seen with this war in Ukraine.
Sure. I'll be brief on the bio because I'm the least interesting part about it, I think, and what's going on is really important. I've been making films in Ukraine and about Ukraine since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, since the beginning of when Putin attacked in 2022. And it's now an anthology that is going year by year. And one day will be the history that people can look back on. And it's about the history of the people. Somebody at the front, because I filmed at the front, said, everybody comes to film combat, and you've come to film us, because I'm really interested in the people's lives during war. And then, as far as and what got me into it is my father survived the Holocaust in this area, and I don't want to be silent while now these people need our help. So that's a little bit about me. And what's going on now is, in the situation that I've become a real advocate for, has to do with the abduction of children, and as part of the genocidal campaign of the Russians. And they've abducted tens of thousands of children. The Russians say it's 700,000, but it's probably an exaggeration. Every area that they take the children away from the parents, pretty much. And many of them have been put up for adoption. They have a website where you can adopt, where you can, like, it's sort of like when you look for if in the rest of the world, if you look for, you want to get a dog or a cat, you can go on the ASPCA website, and they have that same kind of thing for kids. And it's just totally weird and bizarre and terrible. And then now the ones that have become, the war has been going on for a while, military age, they're putting them, either giving them weapons and sending them to the front to fight the Ukrainian brothers and sisters. It's completely dystopian is what's going on with that.
The phrase that's been used to describe you and is obviously you've got so much on-the-ground expertise, but also you've been one that's leaned into and described as a disinformation expert. So when I hear that word, I think about it from this perspective. My mother used to say, "You just stop lying," and so disinformation. And I look at this and I think, Benjamin, you're out there fighting this fight and bringing light to what's going on. But at the end of the day, disinformation, soft word for lying. So let's talk about the disinformation that you have seen or that is taking place when it comes from from Russia and their justification for this war.
Yeah, well, disinformation is kind of a general term, but that people use, and I see it a little bit more, even broader than that, as far as controlling the information domain, which is what governments try to do. Whatever government you're in, they try to control what people hear and know, and then that becomes a reality. And and I think that, like your show. You try, I mentioned it last time, you try to lay out the information and let people make their own decisions. And so I think you try to do it in a straight way. And so if you're living in a world where the information flow is not straight, then your reality is very different. And that's really what it comes down to. And so as far as, what they say, for example, with the kids, the official line that they have is that they're saving the children from being killed on the battlefield. So they haven't abducted any of these kids. They're actually saving the kids, and they're saving their lives by taking them and putting them in good homes, which is, and that is something that they keep telling people, and some people believe it. And I think that the Trump administration, unfortunately, and I'm not Republican or Democrat when it comes to these matters. For anybody who wants to help Ukraine, they're willing to accept the Russian point of view sometimes, for whatever reason they have. So, for example, Trump today, I watched Trump at Davos today. He said Putin wants to have peace, and that's because Putin says he wants to have peace, but it's peace of, he wants a piece of Ukraine is what he wants. But so they put out these lines, and that for whatever reason, and I don't know exactly the motive, but I have my ideas. that Trump, let's say, because like who's the receiver of the information? You can also say that some of the folks in the White House are willing to use it and say, you know what, he's got a good point. You know, he wants to have peace, but it's the Ukrainians who want to really have war, kind of thing. Why can't they come to a deal? And J.D. Nance has said that why do they keep fighting when they can do business together? Putin just wants to do business with them. You know, it's a whole twisted world.
Yeah, that's that disinformation sort of. I mean, again, I heard what you said loud and clear about not left or right, but just what are we going to do to solve the problem? But that's the same kind of disinformation, or don't believe what you saw or believe what you heard. I'll use the example of Renee Good being murdered in Minneapolis. Like, we didn't see what happened. And so they want to tell us that Putin wants to have peace and to do business. No, he doesn't, because he's never said that. He, from the beginning, has said he wants to take back. Like, we could bring Crimea into the conversation. And I know you've had exposure to that, and you've covered that in some ways. So it's not that. That is totally a disinformation or misdirection tactic by our government, but also by this current Russian leadership. It's misdirection, it's misinformation, it's lies, it's all of that. But at the end of the day, this is why I so appreciate what you've done and why the Steel Porcupine is such an important bit of work. But let me ask you this question, and there's two words that come to mind. One of them is eliminationist, and the other one is extermination. Are those words too heavy of words to use right now in terms of what Russia is trying to do to Ukraine? Or let us hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, my brother Daniel came up with the concept of eliminationism, and so I have to give him credit, which is, and that's what genocides are, through history. And we can take if you want to take a American example, what happened to the Native Americans, which is we still have Native Americans. They weren't extinguished, but we've really eliminated them from the culture, the land, and basically from thriving as a group. Through generations, and there was a very bad period. So the idea is that you don't have to exterminate everybody like the Germans wanted to do with all the Jews. That was unusual, but you want to destroy their nation. And that's what Russia wants to do with Ukraine, and why they're not giving in right now, even though they're not winning on the battlefield, because there are different tools of destroying a group of people, which is what eliminationism is. You want to eliminate them from the land, so you can. There's mass murder. There's destruction of the next generation, which is, and how do you do that? It's raping the women.
Yeah.
Because it's and stealing the children, it's destroying the religion, the church, which is what the Russians are doing when they occupy land. So there are many different tools that you can destroy a nation, and it's important for us, I think, that to preserve our nation. To understand what a nation is and what people are, and what makes us who we are, and because that's our identity, and the whole point of eliminationism is to destroy a people's identity.
Yeah, heavy stuff. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with author, humanitarian, filmmaker, documentarian, and someone that I've really, I guess you could say, come to respect even more, Benjamin Goldhagen. Thank you again for being with us this morning. Ben, let's talk a little bit about human rights. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, what you just described before took that little break, It's really about human rights, because if we look at enslavement in the United States, a lot of the things you just described, taking children away, raping women, taking away identity, that was part of the enslavement in the United States. The Native American folks here, the indigenous folks on this continent, what happened in great measure during the Holocaust. It's all about eliminating human rights. And what's happening in Ukraine right now is the same thing. And candidly, what could happen in Greenland would be another situation where the United States is a player in eliminating human rights from people who are part of a land. How do you view that?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know that much about Greenland, but there are 50,000 people there, and it's kind of a bizarre situation. And I'm thinking of Greenland in terms of Europe and the rest of what's going on. But yeah, it's kind of a screwy situation because they are very much identify as Greenlanders, not as part of the Denmark.
Right.
And they've been screwed by Denmark, is my understanding, and it looks like they might get screwed again. It's really hard to know what's going on there. We want it for minerals and a military base, is what what the administration says, and they're pretty much in the middle. And that happens that happens all the time. Is how people get run over by some sort of bigger, more powerful the bigger, more powerful group of people. So, but I don't know exactly. But when it comes to Greenland and what's going on with Europe, I think this is going to what you were saying about Europe and turning a few minutes ago before I came on, Europe and turning away from United States, is they're really feeling like an abused spouse, I think. And because, they get hit by every time, it's sort of like every time they try to make nice with Trump, he hits them again with something like it was tariffs at the beginning, and then now he went, and then they try to make trade deals and bring business to the United States, and right when they start trying to get back on the right track, he tries to hit them again with tariffs over Greenland and take away Greenland, and it's really an abusive relationship at this point. And it's very much like a spouse coming home and hitting, pulling out whatever he normally pulls out and hits her again with it. And that's what this Greenland thing has become for Europe, I think. And at some point, they're going to just say, we don't want to have this kind of abusive relationship like this. And yeah. I think they're at that point.
I would agree, and I think that I have two sort of feelings or thoughts about it. One of them is good for them, and they should do it. And secondly, I think, gosh, what happens if they do? And so there's this unique, like the child is sitting there seeing to use your analysis and comparison of the abusive relationship. The children, if there are children, are sitting there going, which direction do I go? If they stay together or if they pull apart. And that's sort of what the rest of the world is seeing, is how do we navigate this when these superpowers, if they decide to collide or if they decide to stay, go in their opposite directions. So I appreciate that sort of breakdown. I mean, and the other thing too, going back to human rights for a moment, Ben, is what I've always thought and looked at when it comes to human rights is it's about protecting vulnerable groups. It's about making sure that, everybody's needs and a sustaining of dignity is still in place, and, empowering people. And none of what this administration's doing, and certainly none of what Putin is doing with regard to this war in Ukraine, is about any of that. So when you hear J.D. Vance say something like, why doesn't Ukraine just stop? One should ask J.D. Vance, why don't you ask Russia to stop? Because they're the aggressor. And so you're taking away these items that you say are important to you, but in fact, Russia's not going to stop if Ukraine decides to stop. They're going to continue to move forward. Talk a little bit about that stopping being unrealistic or really, frankly, just a bunch of BS.
Yeah, well, this has been the really frustrating thing because what's happened in the White House, unfortunately, and again, I don't need to say I'm not right or left, Democrat, Republican, but I'm just reporting in this case. Is that the people the voices who were more for human rights and saying, look, we've got to protect these people, help these people, not even protect them, but help these people, not go the Putin way. That was General Kellogg, and he was hired as the originally when Trump 2 came in as the special envoy for Ukraine. He was sidelined, and now he's out.
Yep.
And all you have is the J.D. Vance and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. They prevailed, and they only talk about business deals. And ultimately their goal. I think they do want peace, whatever that is. I don't even know in their minds what peace is, but they also want a hotel in Moscow. Mm-hmm. And and mineral deals, and they see, I believe that some sort of like economic cooperation and deal with the bad guys will make the bad guys into good guys, or at least they'll. And it's just like bad guys are just bad guys usually,
They're not, right? Hey Ben, they're not going to suddenly wake up one morning and go, you know what? I think I'm going to be a good guy from now forward. No, they wake up thinking about how much more hell and havoc can I cause, and at whose expense, which I don't give a damn about, can I cause it? So thank you for putting it that way. Sorry.
No, and you're right. You're right there. You're right there. And this is, and in the meantime, people are dying. And right now in Chicago, you have the weather, sometimes even a little worse, sometimes a little better than what Kyiv is right now. Mm-hmm. Kyiv is having a few warm days, but they had your temperature exactly almost last week. But what they didn't have was they didn't have electricity.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have electricity for 3 days because Russia knocked out the power plants. And so imagine Chicago right now if you didn't have light or hot water or heat, and you don't know when it's going to go on. And when it goes on, it only goes on for a few hours a day and goes off again. And so this is what the delay, because it's not just us talking about how bad things are and how good things could be or what, there are people really suffering at this very moment that we're talking. And they don't have they don't have heat like Chicago does or light, in millions of people right now, and because of what's going on. And while all of this foolishness is going on amongst these characters in the White House, there is true suffering.
Yeah,
and they're not giving up because they know it. Look, if looking at the indigenous people of the United States, if they gave up, if they gave up, if they surrendered, it would be the end of them.
Yeah.
Because, and so that's really the choice. You have to, they say, the first year, they say I'd rather have one cold winter than a lifetime being Russian.
Yeah. Ben. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
No. What popped into my mind, and I know we could talk about this for a much longer period of time, is this, and I have to ask you this question. It's really two parts as we wrap up. How are you? What are you doing to stay in this fight, to stay involved like this? Because you see it, boots on the ground as a journalist, as a documentarian. And as a human rights advocate, what do you do to keep yourself, for lack of better words, motivated to be in this fight and to continue to report on this?
I tell you, there's something, Putin is relying on people becoming war weary, is the term. And it gets hard. I tell you, it does get hard. It's been 4 years, and making films, having to deal with all the things that you have to deal with, and just mentally, I'd much rather go to a football game. But I know that these people need my help as far as getting the word out. And if I were silent and people like me were silent, then they would succumb. And so I feel it's a lot tougher for them to be without heat, to be fighting, to be dying. And I know because of my father's experience what one man who was the mayor of his town saved his life during World War II and the Holocaust. So I feel obligated.
Yeah.
And it's that obligation, and it's people. I'm not the only one. In whatever you do, I mean, in the things that you care about and other people care about, it's a hard fight. But you got to be in the fight in order to win it.
Those words, Ben, I've been saying my version of it. We got to be in the fight. We all have to be in these different fights that we have. Benjamin Goldhagen, a Russian disinformation expert, but far more than that. He is a documentarian and the producer, director, writer of two films, The Zero Line and The Steel Porcupine. It's been great and an honor to have you with us. Please stay safe, my friend. And one day the powers that be will allow us to meet face to face. But I appreciate all your hard work and you taking some time out to talk and share with our audience today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me again. Take care, Richard.
You too, Ben. We'll talk soon. Bye now. So the people that listen to our show, you heard me say this before, and I say it because I mean it. We got to send out good vibes, and we got to send out, that universal protection to people like Ben, because not only is he, on the ground doing this work, but he's not, as he said, he's not nearly at the risk of the people that are actually being attacked. But the fact of the matter is, him opening his mouth puts him in a different category, Henry, of being at risk. Him reporting on this, him creating two documentaries on Russia's invasion is incredibly important, and he understands. So, in your moments of sending out good vibes and prayers and thoughts to people that are fighting, because today's show is about some people that are real truth tellers and that are on the front line and fighting. Ben is one of them, and it's an honor to have him with us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking with another one in the 7 o'clock hour. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520, AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Sniffles and sneezes got you down? GoodRx is here to help with big savings on commonly prescribed cold and flu meds. GoodRx is free and easy to use. GoodRx is accepted at all major pharmacies like CVS, Walmart, and Walgreens. Just search your prescription, find a coupon, then show your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx is not insurance, but it works whether you have insurance or not. If you do, GoodRx may beat your copay price. Download the free app or visit GoodRx.com to save today.
Pro Savings Days are on at Lowe's. Get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, My Lowe's Pro Rewards members get an additional 5% off when you buy 5 or more select GE, Whirlpool, and Electrolux kitchen or laundry major appliances. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 123. Discount valid to My Lowe's Pro Rewards members only. Exclusions and other restrictions apply. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See associate or Lowe's.com for details. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Visit Lowe's.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
WCPT 820 will be hosting a candidate forum for the 3 leading candidates for Illinois' open United States Senate seat in the Democratic primary on February 6th.
Please join us at the Plumbers Hall at 1340 West Washington in Chicago, or listen to the live broadcast.
Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, Representative Robin Kelly, and Illinois Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton will be discussing their stances on the issues and making their case for your vote.
WCPT hosts Patty Vasquez, Richard Chu, and of course Jonas Esposito will be moderating the forum.
To attend in person, go to heartlandsignal.com/WCPT 820 and register. We'll have limited seats available, so please register early.
Meet the leading Senate Democratic candidates at a free WCPT Live Candidate Forum at Plumbers Union Hall, Local 130 on Washington Street in Chicago, Friday, February 6th.
The forum starts at 1 p.m. and is sponsored by Plumbers Union Local 130.
File with TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They help you get your biggest refund, and then we help you do more with it. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. President Trump hosted presidents, prime ministers, and top diplomats at a signing ceremony to launch his Board of Peace at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Trump reaffirmed the Board of Peace will start with a focus on Gaza, but then look globally, and said the group could work with the United Nations to help resolve conflicts.
Together we are in a position to have an incredible chance. I don't even call it a chance. I think it's going to happen. To end decades of suffering, stop generations of hatred and bloodshed, and forge a beautiful, everlasting, and glorious peace for that region and for the whole region of the world, because I'm calling the world a region. The world is a region. We're going to have peace in the world. And boy, would that be a great legacy for all of us. Everybody in this room is a star, or you wouldn't be here.
A number of countries, many of them close U.S. allies, have expressed concerns Trump might want the board to rival the UN. The full membership list is still not clear. Meanwhile, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff says Trump is considering ideas like a tariff-free zone for Ukraine that could help industry develop in the war-torn country.
I think we've made a lot of progress. I think in the beginning of this process, there was a little bit of confusion. I was going to Moscow quite a bit, but I think it was important that we go there because we're at the end now, and I actually am optimistic.
Audio courtesy Victor Pinchuk Foundation. Speaking at the World Economic Forum, Witkoff said he'd depart for Moscow tonight. Asian shares mostly advanced after Trump walked back from imposing tariffs on 8 European countries over Greenland and ruled out using military force to take control of the territory. This is AP News. A former Uvalde Schools police officer has been acquitted of charges over the response to the Robb Elementary massacre.
On May 24, 2022, at least 370 law enforcement officers rushed to Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, where a teenage gunman ultimately killed 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers. Adrian Gonzalez was among the first on the scene, but prosecutor Bill Turner says
there was a man who had a duty to act who failed to act.
Gonzalez faced 29 charges of child abandonment and endangerment and up to 2 years in prison. But his attorney, Jason Goss, told jurors,
the memory of those children that I agree should be honored is not honored by an injustice in their name.
Jurors deliberated for more than 7 hours before doing just that. Gonzalez said he was thankful, but declined to offer a message to victims' families.
I'm Marcela Sanchez.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. An extreme cold warning will go into effect here early Friday morning. We'll see partial sunshine developing here for today with a few spotty flurries possible late, a high into the mid-20s. Breezy winds out of the west at 15 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 35. For tonight, a chance for some flurries at times, partly cloudy, a low near -8. By Friday, sunshine will see high around 0. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 16.
Horowitz and Associates. Cliff Horowitz's grandfather started this family law firm, and he always said, you know what, if we're going to get full justice for our clients, we have to go to trial. Trial, though, can be very time-consuming, and that's why most firms won't go to trial. They just settle for the insurance company's offer. But the Horowitz family spent a century going to trial. They're taking cases to trial now, and they're winning many record-setting verdicts. Cliff Horowitz is a third-generation trial lawyer, getting people the full justice they deserve. Call 312-800-8000 or go to horowitzlaw.com.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Richard Chu's got his eyes on the truth, and you're right where you need to be. This is Chu's Views.
So, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us this morning. It was great to have Benjamin with us. Fighting. We have to be in the fight, and he said it. He made it very clear. That's one of the reasons. That is a big reason why he's still doing what he's doing. And you guys know how I am about people who get in the fight, who roll up their sleeves and do the work. And you know, we've learned lessons over the years that when we fight, we win. We tend to win. And sometimes the victory is takes place over a longer period of time. But at the end of the day, not fighting. And I love what he said, that people have realized that they're not going to give up, because if they give up, then they're going to be basically gone. And that's why I asked him if the words, elimination or extermination were too strong of words. And he said no, because that is the ultimate goal of what Russia's perpetrating right now. Here in Illinois, here in Chicago specifically, we've got some great fighters. We've got a great bench politically, but we've got a great bench of people who believe in taking care of our communities. And with us this morning is, I would say, the leading voice, if not one of the leading voices in the space of gun violence. There's an act in Illinois called RIFL, the Responsibility in Firearm Legislation Act. And Dr. Anthony Douglas, a trauma surgeon at the University of Chicago, is one of the lead organizers behind this act. Want to welcome him to the show. Good morning, Dr. Douglas, and thank you for hanging out with us this morning on Choose Views.
Richard, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I don't know if you had a chance to catch the segment that we just had with Benjamin Goldhagen on, who is a documentarian and is really leaned in and on the ground and covering what's happening with the war in Ukraine. But it's, it's violence, and it's unfortunately violence on a world scale in a war. But you might say, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, that what we're dealing with firearms in the United States of America is another war. It's another, it's terrible violence. It's led to so much violence, so much death and carnage. But in many ways, some might view it as a war on our own society. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts there, Dr. Douglas?
Yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely a war. As a trauma surgeon at the University of Chicago, who sees this in training, to finish my training, who sees this every day on the south side of Chicago, is devastating. Much like in war, there are many casualties, some who are unintended, but we know that what drives gun violence, especially in inner cities across this country, is desperation, and we have an industry that is essentially supplying us with the tools of our own destruction and profiting from the desperation that exists not only across the globe, but specifically in our own cities, in our own country. So I would describe it as absolutely a war on our communities, and it's challenging to see.
One of the things that is often the pushback when, candidly, conservatives, GOP, and in some cases even some moderate Democrats, to make this for the moment to set this up, is a partisan moment. But the reality is, we hear from the people who are on the other side of this conversation that those are just bad people. They're just reckless. They're just they're thugs, and they're disgusting people, and they should know better. And you get all these sort of frankly sort of highbrow conversations and comments about gun violence on the south side of Chicago, gun violence on the west side of Chicago, or any place where there are black folks and other people of color. It's always they're awful people, they're bad people, they're this, they're that. But a lot of folks don't understand, to your point about desperation and disenfranchisement, that is a fuel to this already burning fire. Talk a little bit about that part, and we'll get into some more technical pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing, Richard, that I always try to bring up, especially with our legislators who have that mind frame, is that there's somebody on the other side of that gun. As a trauma surgeon, Richard, I don't believe in shielding people from what this issue really looks like. But as a surgical resident in training, I've seen babies before they reach their 1 year milestone, before they learn to utter the 2-word syllables "mama" and "dada," with bullet wounds in their forehead. I've seen, men who, at the end of an illustrious career in public service, lives ended because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time on the Dan Ryan. And what people must understand about this issue is that, while we talk about gun violence and why it particularly affects people of color, minorities in this country, black and brown people, that is not by accident. Our country has a history that has created certain neighborhoods that have certain elements of desperation that lead to people making decisions in order to survive. When you look at maps of unemployment, when you look at maps of access to health care insurance and Medicaid, when you look at maps of high school graduation rates, and you look at maps of poverty and food insecurity and income, and then you add the map of gun violence, you get the same exact map. And so that just goes to show all of us that this problem is bigger than just, there's bad people in this neighborhood. It gives you a depiction of what the conditions are like in that neighborhood and the decisions that people are having to make in order to survive on a daily basis. And I'll end with this story, Richard. I was in Champaign-Urbana working with some street outreach professionals and talking about the legislation we're going to discuss today. And they told me as we were walking through some of the public housing in that area, we saw a young boy, 13 years old. And when we approached the boy, we had a conversation with him. When he left, the street outreach professional told me, that young man has no food in his cupboards, but he has access to a $1,000 firearm in his home. And someone asked the question, well, what do you, can you get the gun away from him? What can you do so he doesn't have access to that $1,000 gun yet has no food in the home? And he said, you have to replace that firearm with something just as sustainable to help him and his little sister survive, so that they can have food on their table, so that they can have some type of access to a livable future.
That is just it's chilling. One of our producers here just sent me a text saying that the descriptions that you're giving us are sending chills down his spine, and I would agree with him wholeheartedly in that space, Dr. Douglas. I sometimes when I think about that, not sometimes, all the time when I think about this, I look at history. And we go through the years, and you just talked about the employment and income and resources heat map in relationship to violence, and this is what frustrates me about some of the general conversation from the general public that's not black or of color or disenfranchised if they're white, is that people don't want to talk about how the element of economic security or the lack of that is going to, and it links right to this 13-year-old boy. The history in this country of disenfranchisement, of racism, of redlining, of bias leads to people doing what they have to do to sustain themselves. And you can make the comparison. I can make the comparison. I don't put words in your mouth. What's happening in the Ukraine, going back to the previous segment, they were attacked. And they have historically been attacked by Russia in one way or another, starving off resources, blockades, all the rest. So Ukraine has had to defend itself. Meanwhile, the big dude on the block, Russia, just keeps attacking. The same thing is, not the same thing, but the literal commonality of disenfranchisement and taking resources from people is no different by many measures of what happens on the south side of Chicago, west side of Chicago, and other communities throughout the country, is that you take resources away, you redirect resources to more white, more middle-class American communities, somebody's going to suffer. And that's where we are and have been for a long time in America, and frankly throughout many places throughout the rest of the world. And it's a global epidemic as much as it is an American epidemic when it comes to resources. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you referred to history, Richard, and when we look over, not that far in the distant past, in the Holocaust, my good friend Tenny Gross at the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago often shares this story with me about how, just years after the Holocaust, when, Israeli people were displaced, the desperation that was created led to many of the Jewish people during that time turning on one another, and rates of gun violence that were increasing among their own community. When you put people in conditions where they have to survive, in disparaging conditions, they have to make decisions that allow them to prolong their life. And it's hard for someone who doesn't live or does not have that lived experience or has not been in those situations. It's hard for them to conceptualize and understand. But I think, more than anything, we have to ask questions. We can't just assume and make assumptions about, people from certain communities that are impacted by this, because there's more to the surface. I don't think anybody is born and wants to be commit gun violence. No one's born with the mindset that when I get to the age of 16, 15, 18, I want to rob people. I want to hijack cars. I want to, join gangs. That's, we're not born with that mentality, right? And so we have to, as people who don't live in these situations, ask the questions: what are the conditions and what are the scenarios and situations that these people are in that are leading them to make decisions that are not only harmful to them but to our community and cost us financially.
One of the things, and let me just do some quick business. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu, and we are talking with one of the leading voices in the space of gun violence, is Dr. Anthony Douglas. So, Dr. Douglas, one of the things that I position to people oftentimes is this: when it comes to the violence in general, specifically gun violence, and where the guns come from and all these other things, I've asked people that have said things to me like, well, Richard, is it safe there? Is it dangerous in that neighborhood? And I'll retort, depending on the person, no less threatening than, the domestic violence that takes place in many of the suburbs that goes unreported. Mm-hmm. But so that's my pushback oftentimes. But I also ask people this question: imagine if you did not have the legacy and historical goodness in your life, and your children didn't have that. What do you think might happen to, your lifestyle in the community that you live in? What do you think would happen to you and your family if you weren't brought up in an environment where resources, were less and opportunity was less and all these things were less? What do you think you would do? And oftentimes, people will try to deflect and say, yeah, but those people should be doing blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it still comes back to that. No one can answer that question. It's a deflection to, yeah, but Richard, those people should be doing this. But ultimately, they don't look at history long enough to say that violence is a product of, or a result, I should say, of the lack of things being prevalent in communities so that they aren't snatching purses and breaking into cars and doing these other things. I'm not an advocate of bad behavior. Nobody get that wrong or get it twisted. But we have to look at history to understand how we got to a place where so many people would make that, what happened in their lives that they would make the decision to do that type of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. History, Richard, has created these conditions, and you're absolutely right. What we're seeing, especially, we're talking about one piece of gun violence, right? We're talking about urban gun violence. And when you look at the conditions today of many of these neighborhoods that are plagued by gun violence, there are there's a clear history and a disenfranchisement that is manifesting now. 50, 60 years of racism and disenfranchisement and, preventing, black people from access to the housing market and redlining and destabilizing communities and the war on drugs and, so many policies that were violent that have led to present day violence that exists within these communities. And we have to call that out. We have to acknowledge it, and we have to repair and reinvest in these communities that we've disinvested. Again, we're talking about one piece of violence, right, Richard? I mean, I often like to myth-bust, people assume that this is a black and brown problem, but the reality is in our country, the Surgeon General released a report that 1 in 2 adults in America can say that they have been impacted by a firearm-related incident. So it's no longer a minority problem. This is all of our problem. And in fact, the most vulnerable to gun injury and death are white aging men with suicidal intentions, right? And so this is all of our problem. It's not just a black and brown problem.
And it's presented that way because it then allows the country to get a pass on what we know is going to be effective, which is what you've been such a big part of, and one thing I don't want to miss, and that's the legislation, RIFL. That legislation here in Illinois is powerful legislation. We should ban all assault weapons, no questions asked, throughout the entire country. That's me for a moment. I just had to get that out. But Dr. Douglas, talk a little bit about the legislation. Talk a little bit about RIFL.
Well, the RIFL Act, Richard, if you didn't resonate with anything we've said to this point and you feel like, you are degrees removed from the issue of gun violence, I have to remind you about who is paying for all of this. Right. We, while you may feel well removed from this issue, depending on the community you come from, you are paying in your pocketbook year in and year out in taxes for the outcomes of gun violence. The reality is that almost 66% of people injured by firearms are on Medicaid and Medicare, and gun injuries are extremely expensive. Especially providing medical care for them, but also, it's expensive for hospitals. It's also expensive for insurance companies, and it's expensive in terms of judicial and law enforcement costs to deal with this issue. And every year, Illinois is estimated to be burdened with the cost of gun violence between $18 to $20 billion a year. And that is for the direct and indirect costs of gun injury. Staggering numbers. And the most sobering part about it is the makers of firearms, this private industry that makes these products, pay nothing for the consequences of their for-profit activity. In fact, by federal law since 2005, during the Bush administration, they were shielded from lawsuit. So a manufacturer or retailer cannot be held responsible for the actions of a third party. So when their products show up at the scene day in and day out and cause the harm that they cause that we see every day in the trauma center, manufacturers cannot be held financially responsible for that. And in my conversations across this state and with lawmakers and with gun owners and non-gun owners, when you tell them that they're paying for the cost of gun injury, no matter what community they live in, no legislator or no person, gun owner or gun owner alike, have I heard to date say that they think it's okay that we cover the cost of gun injury while this private industry continues to profit from the carnage and the harm that it's creating. And so that is at the heart of what the RIFL Act is about. It's about corporate accountability, and it's asking the question of our lawmakers, is this our financial responsibility to bear? Because it hasn't been in other industries.
The break point should be, and that's a great comparison to if an industry isn't going to be responsible, have to be responsible for this, but the individuals are going to, and we are. That, to me, that's where the legislation has its real teeth, and that's where the real messaging has to be. You as an individual, no matter what community you live in, and let's be honest, there's gun violence in so many communities that are not brown or black communities. It's just not reported as readily as it is about those communities. But those same communities that think they get a pass are paying, because when we talk about the cost, not just the tangible cost, but someone is injured, there's all the other things that come with that, the rehab, the time away from work, all those other factors that play into it. That's a cost to the community, no matter where you are. And so I think the real teeth is, to your point, is making that comparison or the analysis of the businesses, the industry rather, gets away with it. They get to cause harm. And because of a dumb law or bill during a Republican administration, let me be honest, and we all know it continues to cost people in communities that don't think that they're affected by it. And so the effect isn't always just the shot itself or the injury itself, but it's the financial piece that doesn't get talked about enough. Go ahead. Sorry,
Richard. The fact that we, in a time where people are struggling to afford, activities of daily living, groceries, you name it, the fact that this is one of the expenses that we are writing checks for year in and year out is jaw-dropping and should infuriate people. We've never given any other industry this financial freedom and pass from accountability. And so that is what the RIFL Act is about. It creates a fund in the special state treasury fund that manufacturers of firearms would contribute to annually based on how frequently their products are recovered in an injury or death. So if their products are not recovered, they get a handshake, you receive their license to sell, distribute, and import, and they go about their way. But if their products are recovered, then they must pay into this fund proportional to the harm and public costs that their products generate to relieve us as taxpayers and to relieve, the injured and families of the overwhelming cost burden for this issue. It's a very logical and really, sensible solution to just creating financial accountability. Right now our interests are misaligned. Their interest is to continue to profit off the trauma and the fear that their products create, that we can go to the mall and be a victim of a mass shooting or live in communities where gun violence is endemic. And our goal is just public safety. And until we align their financial pocketbook with our interest, which is public safety, it'll be hard for us to see a drastic change in increased safety in our communities.
Yeah, Dr. Douglas, it's been great talking with you about a topic that's a hard topic to talk about, not a great topic, but the legislation that you've been behind, and you've gotten some really great support from state legislators, and I know that on a national level, this is a conversation that we have to continue to have. But I appreciate you taking the time out to spend some time with us this morning. How can folks find you? How can they get more information about RIFL and be a participant in this solution that we know that we need to have?
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, absolutely. To reach out to us to me and as a coalition, you can email RIFL, RIFL coalition @gmail.com. We have built substantial momentum. We have a serious chance at passing this in May. Call your legislator. If you don't know who your legislator is, Google and type in, find my legislator, and you can put in your zip code and find who your state senator and state representative is. Call them, ask them to co-sponsor the RIFL Act, and tell them you, as their constituent, want to see this passed in May. And then, we have a couple of events coming up, Richard, that if people want to get involved, they can email us and let us know. But tonight we have a town hall in Kankakee at Kankakee City Life Center. If you want to learn more about the bill, we're gathering in that community. And then April 30th, We are having a lobby day down in Springfield. Join hands with us. Come to Springfield and help us get this done. But we're at a critical point, Richard. We have a serious chance at passing this. We have the votes in the Senate. We're very close to having the votes in the House. And so right now, more than ever, we need everybody across Illinois calling their lawmakers and calling our governor and asking them to get this done.
Well, two things I want to do to try to help in that effort. One is to have you back on prior to April 30th so we can talk about that meeting, that event. So let's figure out, we'll figure that out offline to have you back on sometime closer to that so we can make sure that's top of mind for people. And then hopefully have a big push before the legislators break for session with the vote in May. So, Dr. Douglas, thanks for being with us this morning. You stay safe, stay in the fight, and we're here to support your efforts, okay?
Thank you for having me, Richard. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. We'll talk with you soon. Bye now. So there you go, guys. You heard what Doc said, and we'll have him back on. We'll figure that out so we can talk about that and just promote what that activity is on April 30th. Let's take a quick break, Henry. 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Hi, girls. It's the new year. What do you want to say to the people?
Be good to each other. And be good to yourself.
What does it mean to be good to each other?
Be kind to strangers, love your neighbor, let people love and live the way they want to. You know, all that good stuff that Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, and the Torah tell us to do.
And what's it mean to be good to yourself?
Eat right, exercise, get enough rest, don't stress out too much, and get acupuncture on the regular. With healthcare costs getting all out of control, it's great that Chicago Community Acupuncture offers high-quality care for only $50 a treatment. That's less than some people pay for a copay.
Yes, I'm grateful that we can help so many people. How do people find us?
You're at Milwaukee, Devon, and Nagel. They can call 773-853-0920. 773-853-0920. Or the website
ChiComAcu
Chicomacu.com.
And Happy New Year!
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. An extreme cold warning will go into effect here early Friday morning. We'll see partial sunshine developing here for today with a few spotty flurries possible late, a high into the mid-20s. Breezy winds out of the west to 15 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 35. For tonight, a chance for some flurries at times, partly cloudy, a low near -8. By Friday, sunshine will see high around 0. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 16.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu.
Yes, you are listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu. Good morning, guys, and welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to Dr. Douglas for taking some time to talk about an extremely difficult but important topic, gun violence in America. It's not just in brown and black neighborhoods. It's all over the country. And the evidence is there to show that. But what we have to do is be able to lean into these conversations and do something about it. I've said this for a long time. We need to reinstate the assault weapons ban, hands down. The numbers are there. The data doesn't lie. When it was in place, gun violence was down, not just specifically in that area. Here's the dotted line part of what the value of the assault weapons ban provided. Not only were shootings down as a result of assault weapons, Henry, and large capacity weapons, handgun violence was down. That's what people aren't talking about. That's the other part of the data. See, so we understand that is it's if we get one, we can get more. So get behind what Dr. Douglas is doing. We will have him back on to talk about this as they get closer to their a couple of events that are coming up in the spring, and certainly before the state legislature votes on this bill, RIFL. We have elections. We've had some recently that are special elections. We had the November activity and the results. And this gentleman's been with us before. The organization is Election Truth Alliance. And I think the key word, the most key word, the keyest of words in their description is truth. With us this morning is Nathan Taylor, one of the leading voices in election results, but also the executive director of Election Truth Alliance. Good morning, Nathan. Welcome back to Choose Views.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. I like how right before this you were talking about the data, behind some of those concerns, and that's exactly what we focus on here at the Election Truth Alliance. It's not about candidate or party. It's about the data and about the voters. So we do have all kinds of things to talk about today, but I mostly wanted to hear some of your big questions. We have covered a lot of ground since we last spoke. I know last time we talked about some of the upcoming reports. Well, at this point, we have actually published a analysis of the election voting behavior out of Michigan, Wayne County, which is Detroit and some of the other areas around it, and that one was pretty interesting. And then of course we have in the near future we're looking at putting out a preliminary report for Wisconsin, and then we do have another deeper dive into Minnesota, going back to the 2020 election, which is everyone's asking about. What does 2020 look like? How does that compare? What's going on there? So Illinois sadly isn't next up in line soon, but hopefully we'll have some opportunity in the near future to start digging a little deeper into some of these other states, such as yours.
So talk about these. So let me back up and start differently. When we were talking last time, Nathan, one of the things that I was just in awe of is the fact that there were more than just a few people. There's an organization. You are an executive director of an organization that looks at the data to say, something doesn't make sense. Now, that's a layperson like me that doesn't do what you do, putting my spin on it. Something doesn't make sense. And so...
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We actually had a little saying in the beginning, which is the math ain't mathing. And yeah, I mean, so when the ETA first started just after the 24 presidential election, there were... me, Lily, and Jive, who kind of helped, begin building out the ETA and now are the executives pushing, for more investigations. We pretty much were like, there's so many weird little things around our elections. Is anyone actually investigating in the places we think there are concerns? And what are they actually finding? And that's what led us down the rabbit hole of using our backgrounds and our skill sets and recruiting volunteers who have even bigger and more complex backgrounds than mine. Mine was specifically cybersecurity and data analysis. And so we started getting actual PhD level statisticians. At this point, we have political scientists who have doctorates and are applying. They're pretty much saying, "Hey, I wrote a thesis about this, and now we're over here working with election data." So it is absolutely at this point a much larger organization than I could have ever hoped for. And it is getting easier and faster to start doing these deep dives and looking at these election results and flagging, are there problems? The way we look at the election results, we've recently, started trying to hammer this home a bit stronger, but there are some statistical methods of looking at elections that have been accepted across the world as more credible, especially when looking at Russian elections. And to me, it's not that complex, but to most people, we kind of try and explain it in a way they can understand. And we're just looking at how does all of the precincts in a county or all the counties in a state, how do they all vote in a way that is either human or non-human? And there are tests that can be done to detect that. And really what our recent analysis, such as in Michigan, is flagging is we're saying when we look at the 24 election, based on these peer-reviewed methods, are there concerns that the voting data and the behavior of the voters may not be normal, may not be human? And if not, what could cause this? And that's the question we keep asking and we keep investigating. And recently we've started putting up concerns when it comes to the election systems and the way we run our elections in the U.S.
May not be human. Okay. All right. So Nathan, I'm going to mess with you for a second. Are you... I say this with the smile. Are you tap dancing around that there are other elements that have impacted our election that may not be human? What does that mean? You really drop some water on me on that one. Help us out there.
Yeah. So when we talk about human versus non-human voting behavior, that just means, human voting behavior tends to be a little bit more random, and voters can't vote in perfect lockstep. Like, you don't know how other precincts and how other voters are voting. And at scale, like across an entire county, if every precinct is voting and shifting in the same way, that is a red flag of, in the case of looking at Russian elections, concerns of vote manipulation. Now, when we do this analysis, we're pretty much saying what is going on, and is the pattern or trends we see a concern? And when we say non-human, the assumption is this may be a algorithmic or machine manipulation of data. And so that's what we've actually flagged when looking at Pennsylvania, for example, in their 24 results. We did an analysis looking at the entire state, and we flagged that the voting behavior across the state matches known examples of vote manipulation in Russian elections, where turnout, which most people seem to get a little confused on turnout. They're told a lot of the time that higher turnout benefits the Democrats. Ironically, looking at what these experts have found and what all of the election forensic community says is turnout itself shouldn't ever benefit one candidate very strongly. And when we talk about turnout, we're just talking about how many votes in a precinct versus how many voters. And we're doing kind of a big picture there. So in Pennsylvania specifically, which I love to use because, as you may know or we may have mentioned, we have active litigation in Pennsylvania based on some of the findings. But we're finding very quickly a interesting relationship between turnout to the Republican candidate across every precinct in some of the most populated counties in Pennsylvania, which doesn't really seem to match the demographics. So the next step for us was, well, let's go look at some of the other swing states. And Michigan, as I mentioned, was one of the states we looked at. And Michigan is really interesting because Wayne County, Detroit, we were like, this is another very populated area. This is, this is the largest, most populated county in Michigan. And Detroit is really interesting. So we're like, well, let's go look at the data and see if it looks like what we're flagging in Philadelphia or if it looks different. And we ran the data, and what was really interesting is we started to find that Detroit potentially runs their elections a little differently than many of the other places we're looking at. The security around their election infrastructure is different, and by perhaps proxy, their election results seem very different than what we were concerned of. They actually look, in terms of Detroit, which they put their precincts in a counting board, and they make up a little under half of all the precincts in Wayne County. Detroit looks textbook just like what normal human voting behavior is said to look like by all of these election experts that we use their methodologies and have applied here in the U.S. And it's really interesting is why would Detroit, of all places, look so statistically normal? And that's the question we're asking is, what changed? How do their systems differ from systems used across the U.S.?
So all right, what then is the answer? Because I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, does that mean that Wayne County, i.e. Detroit, did something wrong or something different, or did they do something right in line with other areas where you think that there may have been voting manipulation, like in Pennsylvania? And frankly, we even talked about the concerns that you have down in North Carolina.
See, that's the question. Is statistically speaking, Detroit looks like they may have done something right in how they've secured their elections. We actually the ETA recently reached out to some of the election officials and government officials that kind of run Detroit because we said we want to sit down and talk to you guys. What are you doing with your voting systems? How do you manage your equipment? And what's interesting is Detroit and Michigan still at large uses, I don't know if we discussed this last time, but one of the concerns we're coming up with is as we do these forensic analysis of election results, we're finding that the common consensus for people is it can't happen here. You can't manipulate our elections here. It would be impossible. Every state runs their own elections. But the common thing that most people don't realize, and we've been kind of educating voters on, is across the U.S., there's really only 2 or 3 major voting systems that count our votes. And they count mail-in voting, they count election day voting, they count early voting, and it's all counted by machines at some point in the process, even hand-counted, even hand-marked paper ballots. And these 2 major systems, they span anywhere from 70% or more of the U.S., and they span the swing states. So that's what's interesting is we're like, Michigan uses some of that second largest voting system, which has recently been sold or relabeled now. And, there are those concerns of who owns now the second largest voting system and who are they associated with. But it's interesting because they use, at a glance, the same systems that are flagging concerns in these other states. But for some reason, Detroit has a bit more authority in how they manage those systems. So we're not sure yet if they perhaps have a higher level of security. But during our investigations, we did find that these systems that are used across the U.S., and especially in Michigan, we started asking the question, well, if this isn't human voting data, what could cause this? And we are finding all kinds of examples of known breaches of these voting systems, of the software these systems use, of the election management system, which is where the counties combined all of the votes from the precincts. And some of the numbers we put out recently was just after the 2020 election in 21, there was multiple breaches confirmed of both those major voting systems, Dominion and ES&S, throughout Michigan alone. And of course, there's a concern where right after the 24 election, a panel of election cybersecurity experts pretty much wrote a duty to warn letter saying we urge hand counting of the results in key swing states. And they then started citing these known compromises of these major vendors, which, at this point there has been actual people who have been criminally indicted and put in prison for helping compromise some of these major vendors, which they were attributed at the time to supporting or helping the Trump campaign. So it's really interesting asking the question, well, why is it that the voting data looks the way and the way the votes are being counted? What could introduce these errors? And we're finding that these systems may not be as invulnerable as we are told. And there has been known targeted attempts to gain access to these voting systems just in the last few years alone.
Wow. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm talking with the Executive Director of Election Truth Alliance, Nathan Taylor. Nathan, wow is probably not a big enough word to use to describe what's happening, but it's definitely, it kind of pins our ears back. It leads me to a couple of things. You talked about Dominion. You mentioned Dominion, and many people don't know this, but they were the name, the company at the tip of the spear of the fraud allegations in 2020, and now that company, if I have my information correct, has been sold or was sold in late fall, early winter, sometime late 2025, to an operative tied to Trump. What's his name? Not Leinecker, something like that. But bottom line is that this concern, and I'm going to say this, and I know it's a full mouth of question. That sort of activity is got people concerned about the midterms, and not only the voting machines or systems that are being used, but if we're going to actually have midterms. And I want to get your take on those two pieces. One, the sale of that company that was at the tip of the spear of the fraud allegations now being in the hands of a Republican Trump operative, one. And two, your thoughts about if we're going to have midterm elections or not. Go for it.
Yeah, I get that second question a lot currently. But I think the concern with the first is we ask the question, should any of our voting systems, which they impact elections, they are probably the most important systems in the U.S. because they can potentially determine the outcome of elections. Should any of our election systems be owned by private interests? Like, that's the question we keep asking is, even the largest voting system isn't so transparent about who's funding them and who they're connected to. And so now, as you know, with what is called Liberty Vote, is what they're relabeling Dominion, it just begs the question, has this been a problem that we've just not been aware of for a while now? And should we allow our voting systems to be owned and proprietary and kind of that black box? where we're not really sure what's going on behind the scenes. We don't really know who's in charge and what their interests are. And their interests should be nonpartisan and for the common good of voters and not for any political entity. And the other half of it is as well, as we've looked at, this exchange of hands, the owner of, now Liberty Vote also owns one of the largest poll book systems, which is used pretty heavily across the U.S. And it begs the question, well, if you've noticed in recent news, some of the concerns coming out about what happened with Doge gaining access to Social Security information, but also apparently they gained access to voting registration information. And one of the recent investigations, I think the Department of Justice even recently mentioned, was they found evidence that Doge was preparing to take some of that voter registration information and give it to entities that wanted to potentially use it in the realm of elections. Well, what's interesting there is we have flagged time and time again, and these experts I mentioned before that had a panel have flagged, there's really only two pieces of the pie you need to potentially change outcomes of U.S. elections. And one was knowing the voter registration information, whether through poll book or through leaked data. And the other half is knowing how to manipulate the systems that count the votes. With those two pieces combined, could you change the outcome of U.S. elections at scale? You potentially could. And would we even catch it is really the question. Now, to answer your second question, are we concerned about the midterms? I will say yes, the ETA is absolutely concerned about the midterms, especially because the voting systems we're using in the midterms will be the same as the voting systems where these red flags are coming up for the 24 election. Are we concerned that the midterms won't happen? Well, based on all of the knowledge of the lawyers that work with the ETA and that we've retained and hired, they raised the flag that it doesn't seem to be within the federal government's power to cancel the midterms. We had elections during the Civil War. We had elections during every major U.S. conflict in history. So there's not really a mechanism to not have the midterms through traditional means. And the states really have the authority to run those elections anyways. So we're less concerned about the canceling of the midterms. I don't think that's feasible under traditional law. That doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's not really feasible currently. What would be more of our concern is, can we guarantee the accuracy and the transparency of the midterms? And there could be so many different ways to potentially try and manipulate elections. And who's really going to catch that and stop it? And that's really where we're saying, hey, there are steps we should already be taking to verify the results of the midterms and secure them so that there's no third party, having, the ability to put their thumb on the scale is really what we're concerned about.
And in this case, they're going to be stomping on the scale if what you've been finding is true or not. And I'm not questioning the veracity or the accuracy of it. I'm just saying if what you're finding is leading us down a path when we single the ownership to third-party groups, the ability for fraud is probably more favorable than not having the elections. I think what I'll start to do or try to do when people ask me that question is to reference, let's be concerned about elections being stalled or creating an environment, because I think this is what can happen. A person sent me this text yesterday, maybe more than the elections being canceled. We've got operatives that are out there saying that the elections are not going to happen, that are on the right or supporting this administration, so that people are less inclined to go to the polls. ICE agents and others showing up at election sites to create a distraction, and then add to that the elections that do take place, the numbers get messed with by these third-party operators. I think that's really more the conversation than if they won't happen at all. Because, again, to your point, the states are the ones that really have the purview and jurisdiction to make sure that they happen. Is that kind of where you are as you're looking at this?
Absolutely. And one of the things we're wanting to do, the Election Truth Alliance, is we're wanting to build relationships with groups all across the U.S., all across the states, because it should fall to the states to defend their elections from, overreach. The last piece we bring up, and this gets asked of us a lot, and we'll start answering this question more as we get into the 2020 election data, which we have and we've looked at, and we'll be putting out, in the near future for maybe some of these swing states, maybe some of these non-swing states, is, a lot of people have brought up the concern recently about the changing of how mail-in voting is going to happen in the U.S., and it's under fire. Mail-in voting is under attack very aggressively by the current administration, and if you've seen recently, I believe there was a law passed that made it so that you could mail in your vote, but until it's postmarked by and received by the post office, it may not even, be counted correctly, which is a concern. A lot of people are asking if I mail in my vote and it never gets postmarked and then it doesn't get delivered before, Election Day or when it's supposed to be counted. Could that be a way to
And
get rid of mail-in vote?
That's easy to tamper with, because if you've got operatives in the postal system that are part of the need to mess with the elections, they can set those things aside and they just go into a circular file or a perpetual non-counted file. Am I in the ballpark?
Well, I'll hit you with two facts here, which is, one, the 2024 election had what was reported to be potentially millions of mail-in ballots that were never counted, whether never delivered or whatever happened. And that was very striking. VTA specifically had a ridiculous amount of people reaching out saying they checked their mail-in voter status on their county portal or their state portal, and their votes was never received, never got counted at the county level. Millions, potentially. And I know Greg Palast, who is an investigative journalist, covered some of that as well. But also, what's interesting now is the data that we have put out when looking at every type of voting in the U.S., especially in these swing states like North Carolina and Pennsylvania. When we look at mail-in voting when compared to Election Day, much of the time, the problems we're finding that are what look like non-human voting behavior is very centered around early voting or Election Day voting, which is interesting. Mail-in voting almost always looks far more statistically normal. Mm-hmm. And we have been like, well, why? What is different about mail-in voting versus Election Day or early voting? Well, one, it's counted at the county level, and there's multiple records of the chain of custody of the ballots, because the county, you confirm with your county, I want to mail-in vote. They send it to you, you send it back, your name's on it, which is different than how Election Day or early voting works. So it's very interesting that we're seeing the norm, how normal mail-in looks. And what's even more interesting is we'll do a study saying how much of the vote in the blue states versus the red states is mail-in, and does that seem to impact the results of those states? So that'll be something we're kind of looking at as we get into the 2020 election as well. Because if you're familiar, the 2020 election had, I think, to record, the largest amount of mail-in voting because potentially maybe COVID during that time.
Nathan, what I want to do is have another conversation with you in the next few weeks, because I think that the more we talk about this and then what you think people can be doing to make sure that they're on point for 2026's midterms, the better. So we got to wrap up today, but it's been great having you with us. How can folks find you, find Election Truth Alliance?
Absolutely. I'd love another opportunity, especially as we put out more stuff. Our website is generally one of the best places to stay up to date on what we're working on, electiontruthalliance.org. We have a newsletter as well, and we have means for people if they want to support the fight. They can go there, they can volunteer to help, they can do a small donation. So that's really what keeps us going. Is we're very grassroots.
That's cool.
It's awesome. I wouldn't go any other way. So.
Nathan,
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. Nathan Taylor, Executive Director, Advocacy and Public Engagement with Election Truth Alliance. Thanks for being with us this morning. Stay safe. We'll have you back again soon, okay?
You stay warm.
All right, man. Bye now. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. Take a deep breath and make your life count. We will see you tomorrow.
Stephanie Miller here. If eating is stressing you out, you're not alone. There's so much confusion around food. One day something's good for you, the next day it's not. No wonder digestion can feel chaotic. What I learned from the Tummy Whisperer is reassuring your body isn't broken, it's communicating. It needs proper guidance. That's why I trust Renee Barish at Digestive Health Solutions as a certified digestive health specialist. Renee works one-to-one, helping people make sense of their symptoms without extremes or overwhelming them. If you've changed your diet and feel the same or worse, if bloating, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, and low energy are running your life, Renee will help you connect the dots. Digestion will calm down, food can feel easy again, and you don't have to figure it all out alone. You've got the Tummy Whisperer. Learn more at thetummywhisperer.com or call Renee at 847-207-2034. One more time, that's 847-207-2034. Let's get you feeling better.
File your taxes for free with TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. Just file on your own in the Credit Karma app by February 28th. Valid for those who didn't file with TurboTax last year.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. President Trump says the U.S. will have total access to Greenland, speaking in a Fox Business interview with Maria Bartiromo on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Trump said the emerging deal includes, quote, all the military access we want. Trump said the deal, if completed, will also allow the U.S. to install an element of his Golden Dome, part of a multi-billion-dollar missile defense system, on the Danish territory. Yesterday, Trump scrapped the tariffs he had threatened to impose on 8 European nations to press for U.S. control over Greenland, after he said he came to an agreement with the head of NATO on a framework of a future deal on Arctic security. Earlier today, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said her country cannot negotiate on its sovereignty. Trump also met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today in Davos. The U.S. and Ukrainian leaders were together for about an hour in what Trump described to reporters as a good meeting.
I had a very good meeting with President Zelensky. Everybody wants to have the war end.
U.S. representatives will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow. Wall Street was poised to open with gains today. U.S. cities are seeing steep declines in their homicide rates. AP correspondent Mike Kempen has more.
A report by the Council on Criminal Justice shows a 21% decrease in homicides last year from 2024 in 35 U.S. cities. According to the report, homicides declined in 31 of the cities, resulting in nearly 1,000 fewer in 2025 than the previous year. But experts say it's too early to say why the declines are happening or how long they will last. The report tracked 13 crimes and recorded drops last year in 11 of those categories, including carjackings, shoplifting, and aggravated assaults.
This is AP News.
AP Sports, I'm Gethin Coolball. Former MVP and All-Star Cody Bellinger has agreed to stay with the New York Yankees on a 5-year, $162.5 million contract. NFL 49ers GM John Lynch says disgruntled star receiver Brandon Ayuk has played his last snap with the team. Rams Pro Bowl linebacker Byron Young missed practice Wednesday with a knee injury, and Seahawks QB Sam Darnold was limited with an oblique injury ahead of Sunday's NFC Championship game. In the AFC title picture, Patriots Pro Bowl linebacker Harold Landry II did not practice with a knee injury, and Broncos running back J.K. Dobbins was limited with a foot injury. And in tennis, men's third seed Alexander Zverev, American Francis Tiafoe, and American women Jessica Pegula and Madison Keys were among those who advanced to the third round at the Australian Open.
I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. An extreme cold warning will go into effect here early Friday morning. We'll see partial sunshine developing here for today with a few spotty flurries possible late, a high into the mid-20s. Breezy winds out of the west at 15 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 35. For tonight, a chance for some flurries at times, partly cloudy, a low near -8. By Friday, sunshine will see high around 0. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 16.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM.